Welcome to A to Z Tales. Every person is born with a block of stone, their potential. Some people spend their whole lives complaining that their stone is too hard, or that no one taught them how to shape it. Others pick up the tools, make mistakes, and learn to sculpt anyway. This story is about one such man, a young apprentice who blamed his master for his failures until he learned that the shape of his life was always in his own hands. If this is your first time on our channel, please subscribe, like, and share this video for more English stories. In a small mountain village surrounded by whispering pines and the gentle sound of running water, lived a famous sculptor named Master Dalen. His sculptures looked so alive that villagers said they could almost breathe. A statue of a young girl seemed ready to step down from her pedestal. A stone bird looked ready to fly. One morning, a young man named Elias came to Dalen's workshop. He was 19, thin and eager, with eyes full of dreams. "Master," Elias said, bowing respectfully, "please take me as your apprentice. I want to learn the art of sculpture and become great like you." Dalen looked at him carefully. "Do you have patience?" he asked. "I will learn it," Elias replied quickly. "Do you have humility?" the master asked again. Elias hesitated, but said, "I think so." The master smiled faintly. "Then you may begin." The first weeks were slow and quiet. Dalen didn't allow Elias to touch a single piece of marble. Instead, he told him to sweep the floors, clean the tools, and watch him work. Every morning, Elias stood behind the master, watching the careful strikes of the hammer and chisel. Tap, tap, tap. With every sound, small chips of stone flew into the air, and a new shape slowly appeared. But after several weeks, Elias grew restless. "Master," he said one afternoon, "when will I get to sculpt? I came here to learn, not to clean floors." The master didn't stop his work. "You are learning," he said softly. "Every time you watch, you learn how stone breathes." Elias frowned. "But I want to make something. How can I learn by just watching?" Dalen looked at him for a moment and said, "The first lesson of sculpture is seeing, not doing." Elias didn't understand. To him, it felt like a waste of time. He wanted results. He wanted to prove himself. A few days later, Dalen gave Elias his first piece of stone. It was rough, uneven, and full of cracks. "Try to make a small bird," Dalen instructed. Excited, Elias began immediately. But his hands were unsteady. He hit the chisel too hard and broke off large pieces. Soon the bird's wing was gone and the stone looked worse than before. When Dalen returned and saw it, he said gently, "You were too eager. The stone needs your respect, not your anger." Elias's face turned red. "Maybe you gave me a bad stone. How can I make something beautiful out of this?" The master said nothing. He simply took another block and, with a few calm strikes, shaped a perfect bird in minutes. Elias looked down, ashamed. But deep inside, he still blamed the master. "He's not teaching me properly," he thought. "He keeps the secrets to himself." Years passed. Elias stayed in the workshop, doing small tasks, polishing, carrying, and occasionally carving simple shapes. He learned, but slowly and without joy. Every time his sculpture failed, he whispered to himself, "It's because the master doesn't guide me enough. It's because he gives me the wrong tools. It's because he never praises me." He envied the master's skill and fame. When people visited the workshop, they admired Dalen's work and barely noticed Elias. Sometimes at night, Elias would stare at his calloused hands and think, If I had a better teacher, I would already be famous. He didn't see that his bitterness was carving him from the inside, shaping him into someone resentful and blind to his own power. One summer morning, Elias decided to leave. He walked up to the master and said, "I've learned all I can here. You never really taught me your secrets. I'll find my own way now." Dalen didn't argue. He simply nodded and handed Elias a small box of tools, a hammer, 3 chisels, and a polishing cloth. "These are yours now," the master said. "They will teach you what I could not." Elias took them but didn't thank him. He turned and walked away, his pride heavy on his shoulders. He traveled to the next town and rented a small workshop. For the first time, he was his own master. But when he began to sculpt, something strange happened. No matter how hard he tried, his statues never looked alive. The shapes were rough, lifeless, and cold. Days turned into weeks. His frustration grew. "Why can't I do it?" he shouted one night, striking the stone in anger. "It's because that old man never taught me properly." But as he yelled, his hammer slipped and broke one of his chisels in half. He stared at it for a long moment, the tool given to him by the master, and a small feeling of guilt crept in. Elias decided to travel again. Maybe he thought he could find a new teacher, someone better. He went from village to village, but no one wanted to take an impatient, angry sculptor as an apprentice. Some told him gently, "The problem isn't your teacher. It's your eyes. You don't see the stone's truth." Others simply refused to speak with him. After many months of wandering, Elias found himself broke and hungry in a small riverside town. He sat near the water, watching a young boy carve a piece of wood into the shape of a fish. The boy worked slowly, smiling as he went. Elias watched him for a while and then asked, "Who taught you to do that?" The boy looked up and shrugged. "No one, sir. I just watch the fishermen and try to make what I see." Elias was surprised. "So you learned it by yourself?" The boy nodded. "When I make a mistake, I start again. Every mistake teaches me what not to do next time." Those words hit Elias like a soft hammer against his heart. Every mistake teaches me what not to do next time. He remembered the master's words. The stone needs your respect, not your anger. For the first time, Elias wondered if the problem had always been him, not the master. What do you think Elias should do now? Should he return to his old master and apologize, or should he continue alone and prove to himself that he can still learn? Type your thoughts in the comments. Your answer might change how the story feels to you. After days of thinking, Elias decided to return to his village. The road was long and his pride felt heavier than the bag on his back. When he finally reached the familiar workshop, he found it quiet. The tools were neatly arranged and dust had gathered on the shelves. Master Dalen was sitting outside, older now, his hair white, his hands still strong. Elias bowed deeply. "Master," he said softly, "I left in anger. I blamed you for my failures, but I see now. You gave me everything I needed. I just never used it." The old man smiled gently. "Then you have learned the greatest lesson." He stood and handed Elias a new block of marble. "The stone has been waiting for you." For months, Elias worked silently. This time he didn't rush, he didn't strike in anger, he listened to the stone, to its tiny whispers, to the rhythm of his own breath. He began to understand what his master had meant years ago. The first lesson of sculpture is seeing, not doing. Slowly, the stone began to change. From its rough shape, a figure emerged, a young man holding a hammer and chisel, looking at his reflection in the stone. The sculpture seemed to speak, "The sculptor and the stone are one." When it was finally finished, Elias carved these words at the bottom: "The shape of your life is in your own hands." The villagers gathered around in awe. Some said it was the most beautiful statue they had ever seen. But for Elias, the beauty was not in the stone. It was in what he had become. Years passed again. Master Dalen passed away peacefully, leaving behind his workshop, now filled with Elias's creations. Elias became a teacher himself, but unlike his younger self, he didn't rush his students. He taught them to observe, to listen, and to take responsibility for their work. One day, a young apprentice grew frustrated and said, "Master Elias, I can't do it. The stone is too hard." Elias smiled kindly. "The stone is never too hard," he said. "Sometimes our hearts are." He then handed the student a small piece of marble. "Try again. You will find the way." The boy began again, slower this time. And as Elias watched, he realized he had finally understood what his master had been trying to teach him all along. Elias lived to an old age, and his workshop became a place of peace and learning. People came not only to see his sculptures, but also to listen to his words. He often told them, "We all begin as rough stone. Life gives us the tools: time, effort, failure, and patience. But no one else can shape us. Not our teachers, not our parents, not our past. Only we can." And when he finally finished his last sculpture, a pair of hands gently holding a block of stone, he smiled and said to his students, "This is my final lesson. Don't blame others for the shape of your life. Pick up your tools. Start carving." What part of this story spoke to you most? Do you think you've been blaming someone for your own unfinished sculpture? Share your thoughts in the comments. And remember, your life is your sculpture. Every choice is a strike of the chisel. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video to support us. Subscribe to our channel AZ Tales for more Learn English through stories. Click the bell icon so you don't miss our next motivational story.